Very nice to see you. Thank you for joining us for these well conversations. My name is Michael, and as you just heard, I earn my living as a magician. And I want to share with you my journey. 1970 was a very good year. Brazil won the World Cup. Muhammad Ali came out of exile to box again. And I saw my first magician. I was 6 years old. And I've got to tell you, in that moment that I saw David Nixon on television, I experienced probably the most profound of human emotions, which was pure astonishment. I'll probably say next to falling in love for the first time, astonishment is our primal state. And for me to experience that as a 6-year-old was almost like being punched in the gut and being truly winded emotionally and spiritually. And I decided for myself, how does one become a magician? I had no answers to that question. So whenever magicians would come on television, I would be cross-kneed on the floor, totally captivated and engaged with the magicians that I saw. David Nixon was the first. There would be Doug Henning, an American magician, and there would be the great Sleight and Fred Capps, mentors of mine that I would meet much later on. However, the turning point for me in my quest to trying to understand what it takes to become a magician occurred when I was 10 years old. I saw a film that literally changed my life. That film was The Sting, starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford. Right, how many of you seen that film? Yeah. It's the most wonderful story, a beautifully crafted film about con men, grifters, card sharks, and in this film I learned and became intrigued with the psychology of deception, the psychology of the big con, and the psychology of human nature. And once again, that question came back to me. How does one learn to be a card shark? I did the most obvious thing. I went to the library. And I asked the librarian, do you have any books on how to cheat at cards? She looks at me and she says, aren't you a little young to be playing poker, young man? Anyway, she takes me round the back to the hobbies section, and I see all these extraordinary books. How to Become a Wizard, The Magic Book by Harry Lorraine, The Royal Road to Card Magic, Modern Magic, How to Become a Wizard. And it was literally, I was sport for choice, but the one that caught my eye was called The Magic Book by Harry Lorraine. Now, if that name means nothing to you, you would become an individual that would feature very heavily in my life over the next 25, 30 years. So I got this book out of the library, and so began my journey and quest into learning how to become a magician. And what attracted me to this book in particular was the subtitle, How to Become a Magician, Master Anytime, Anywhere, Sleight of Hand Magic. Because I didn't have a lot of money to buy the elaborate props, but there was always coins and a deck of cards in the home, so I began to practice sleight of hand just from this book. Now that I've shared with you the story, let me share with you the driving force behind it. Because once you've got the desire and the inspiration, desire and inspiration could evaporate very quickly, but it's got to be something that fuels it. And for me, this isn't a really pleasant story, but I've got to share it because it will allow you to see my world that I grew up in the 1970s. I suffered a lot of bullying when I was at school, and the bullying started when I was 8 years old and would continue into secondary school. I remember my first day of secondary school, I got into a fight because I said something to one boy and he didn't like it. And that was a pattern for the next 6 years. And it reached the point where I didn't really want to go to school because every day was a fight for survival. So I mentioned this to one of my school teachers. I don't even know if he's still alive, but if he is, I want to dedicate this talk to him because he was the one that set me on a totally different path. His name was Mr. Hamilton. And he said to me, Michael, I know that you can do something in this school that nobody else can, and I know that you're interested in magic. We're going to solve this problem once and for all. What does he do? He organizes a school assembly. He says, right, you're going to go on the stage and you're going to do a show for the entire school. I was 13 years old. And I said to him, do you really believe that me doing a trick for the whole school will transform this problem? He said, absolutely. Because you can do something that nobody can explain. So I trusted him enough to give it a try. He was right. Imagine, I've just done my trick, all my tormentors are in the first row, waiting for me to fail, and at the end of it all, I got a standing ovation. Right now I'm present to all the neurons flying off in my brain, because in that precise moment, I got appreciation and acceptance in a way that I'd never quite got before. In that moment, I made a lightning fast calculation in my mind. If I could become a great magician, I could survive. So magic became a tool for survival. As much as I loved the subject, survival at that point in time for me was more important. So I became Magic Man. I transformed from being a victim to becoming a mini celebrity. So talk about having a driving force for something. And in some ways, I'm grateful to the bullies because it gave me a desire and a quest to make something of myself. And as a result, all the magic that I learned, all the books that I studied, and all of the authors of the books that I read were still alive. And I had the privilege of meeting all of my heroes, with the exception of Ed Marlowe and Fred Capps. One gentleman I'd like to mention was a gentleman named Cy Infield. He was a wonderful magician, but he was also a Hollywood movie director who used to live down in Putney by the Hurlingham Club. He directed Michael Caine in the film Zulu. Classic film, classic director, brilliant magician. And he encouraged me to really look at what is it going to take for me to become a unique magician? What is it that separates me from any other magician that an audience may see? So I remember saying to him, well, are there any black magicians? He says, not in my knowledge. So the one thing that makes me unique is my ethnicity, first and foremost. But here's the thing, I don't rely on it. There's got to be something more than just me being the first black magician in the United Kingdom. Okay, so I began to look a little bit deeper. And what did I see? I discovered that I have a natural ability to tell a story, and to tell it in such a way that engages the audience, but also to craft my presentations in such a way that it ties into the personal experience that my audiences may have had at some point in their life. So for me, the trick is much bigger than just the trick itself. It's all about making the audience connect with the experience at a much deep and profound level. And because of that, my career has expanded, not just here in this country, but in Europe and also in the Far East. And I've been able to reach out and present my work in some really extraordinary places, particularly South Africa and the children in the townships. My big dream and vision got created out of my appearance on the Penn and Teller show in 2009, when I started to receive a lot of emails from magicians requesting coaching. Out of the conversation, I created the Vincent Academy. It's a virtual environment where I get to coach magicians worldwide through the power of the internet, both online and offline. And my goal is to transform the environment from the virtual world into physical premises, where I can teach magic as a curriculum and use the craft of magic with my other love, which is personal development, to explore the full range of human potential transformation. And I love nothing better than seeing my students have breakthroughs for themselves. And I'd like to leave you all with one final question. Irrespective of what your chosen field is, why should your audience care? It's one thing to do something really well, but it's another thing to get your audience to care about it, and care about it to the degree that it expands your world as much as theirs, and provide you with a lifestyle and an income that honors you, and also helps your audience to experience life in a new way. And for me, in my world, magic has been the most beautiful personal development program that I've ever been on, because it's transformed me from a shy victim, I would say, into an extraordinary human being. And I don't say that with any ego, because that's been my experience of life so far, and I'm looking to expand that journey even further. Thank you very much.